My name's Emma Robinson, sometimes known as Emma Stewart in the photography world. As Kevin was saying, I studied photography at Camberwell College of Art. That was a really good experience for me. Um, and I also dabble in textiles, and I also did that when I was at uni. But when I came home from London, I started photographing buildings. My then boyfriend, now husband, is an architect, and his practice needed some photos, so I just did that, and then that's how the whole thing kind of started for me. I don't know, at that point, it was just suggested to me as an idea that maybe I should photograph buildings, so I just kind of started from there. Um, I had a tutor because Kevin has asked me to talk a little bit about my approach to photographing place, I suppose. My approach would generally be general to particular. So I had this tutor at when I did the foundation course in Limavady, the foundation art course, and he was a brilliant teacher, and he taught both photography and drawing, and he always said start with general and move to particular. So I kind of took that on board for most of my creative processes. So that's how I approach my architectural photography. If I'm photographing something for a commercial client, excuse me, I usually start off doing a big walk around the space, um, and getting a feel for what it's like. And then I probably take more like contextual shots first, and then I move in to more particular shots, details, and that type of thing. But the photographs that I'm going to be talking about tonight aren't really of the commercial nature. They are from my personal collection, photographs that I've built up, I guess, over the last 15 years, maybe, I suppose you could say. And hopefully you can see the first one there on the screen. Um, the photographs are kind of my home place where I grew up as a child. Um, and that's just outside Ballymena in a place called Larryford. Maybe some of you know it. You've probably passed through it in the blink of an eye and then you've missed it. Um, But I started off taking these photos when I was at uni, and I suppose moving away from home kind of makes it a bit more interesting. Anyone who's has done that kind of knows that feeling you get. It kind of has it draws you back again, I think, in some ways. So I started becoming interested in photographing my home place where I grew up, and it was on well, I suppose I lived in an old house when I was a child, and in the photo, you're looking from my yard over to my granny's house, and that was a dairy farm. And so, of course, for this, I didn't need to build any type of context up. I had years and years of that in my mind, of this kind of mapping, I guess. So I decided to kind of take these photos like off the cuff. I didn't really think too much about them beforehand. And I was quite interested in the idea of the decisive moment when I took these first few photos. Um, if you have a look at it there, at first glance, you might not have noticed, but my granny's kind of looking one way down the road. And then behind the bush, there's a cat kind of tucked in behind the bush. And then my dad's just walking out of the milking parlour. That's probably the hardest one to spot. So I suppose when I was taking these photographs or this particular photograph, I kind of wanted it to feel like it was an in-between moment because it's those kind of in-between moments that build up this picture or this idea or feeling of home. Um, so I guess that's what I was trying to achieve when I was photographing this. There's a quote by this lady called Coral Ward, and she said, "Moments cannot exist autonomously, they only exist pre or post occurring." So I feel like that kind of sums up this photograph. Um, Hopefully this lets me flick to the next photo. Yeah. So this photo here was taken. So I don't know if you can kind of work out from the photos, but this is me taking the photo from like the opposite direction. So this time I'm standing in my granny's yard, taking a photo of my childhood home. And it was an old smithy, actually, this end building here, maybe you can see. And I think when I was taking this, I was feeling like this particular view is really familiar and really one of those quintessential views from my childhood. So I snapped this photo. This one was in an exhibition in Belfast a few years ago. I can't remember what it was called now. It was all over Belfast. There's lots of people who took part in it. Um, so yeah, so there's this kind of, I suppose you would say there's nothing really that much happening in these photos, but they're kind of these little glimpses that are making up something bigger, kind of like Kevin's app. Um, so the next, oh, no. And as well, I suppose I could say I'm kind of photographing thresholds, which was an important theme within my work at that time. Um, these kind of like thresholds that you cross on a daily basis or very regularly, I think they help to build up a sense of home. So I suppose I was kind of photographing that as well. Along with all of that, I was interested. This is zooming right into a particular detail. There's the cat again, to the left, just walking out of the frame. And in the middle, that's my dad's shadow. And then to the right, that's my shadow. Was also interested in this idea of like photography as an index or photography as like a trace of something that was there and then it was gone. Because it's a bit like photography, the moment's kind of there and then it's gone, and it's this weird tension of trying to photograph something that'll never like exist again. Um, so I thought that photograph kind of summed that up, and just like the relationship between these three photos is kind of interesting, I think. Um, I think I took them all on the same day, which is interesting. And I took them all of these photos I think I'm going to be showing you, I took in the autumn. Yeah, I think that was it just after my granddad died? I think it was maybe a wee bit of a reaction to what happened then as well. Um, so that's the first three photos. Excuse me. On to a slightly different one here. Um, onto my other grandparents' house, because obviously I spent a lot of time in both of those places as a child. This one I'm standing in my granny and granddad's garden, looking down at the back of the house. And there was a swing at the back of this house, and I always would have been on the swing looking straight down through the kitchen window. My granny would be there like at the sink or doing something or just like watching me out the window. Um, So again, it was one of those like familiar views, but I didn't like think too much when I was taking them. I just kind of took them. I don't think it's particularly important to me to have, I don't know. I think the photos you take off the cuff can be more, they can become more important than the ones that you like pose or whatever. And especially when you're taking them, they don't feel important at all. Like, um, I took photos of like my student days, and at the time it didn't seem important to take those, or like of my first car, but like when I like look back at those now, I'm like, oh, that's crazy, like how things have changed. So it's photography and time have a really interesting relationship, I think. So that's my granny standing by the back door. And maybe I did ask her to stand outside for a photo or something in this one. And I remember her saying, oh, not in these old clothes. And I was just like, oh, come on, stand outside, and I'll take a photo. And I did. I forgot to say as well, the first three photos were taken digitally, and the rest of these were taken on a Bronica Zenza, an analog medium format camera. So that's not necessarily very it doesn't matter to me really what camera I take them on so much. Um, so this is a photo of my granda, and I took the photograph in the same place, but like I turned around, and he was taking potatoes, digging out potatoes with his fork there out of the bed. And I may well have taken these photos within the same 10 minutes. I can't really remember now. Um, but when I was looking at these to think about what I would say about them, the thing that I found was interesting when I started looking at them was that they kind of mirror each other. Obviously, there's a husband and a wife, but also like physically in the photograph, if you look like the tin on the shed, like the vertical of that, and then like the horizontal of the little shed behind my granda, and she's like in the background and he's like in the foreground. And then if you look at the stick for the washing line is going kind of diagonally, and then the fork is kind of, and it's funny, I didn't really realize that until yesterday. So I think even those photographs as a pair is quite pretty interesting. Um, so yeah, I have a little series of photos from around here, but I've just got two to show you tonight. And the next photos, you may have seen these in Fraggle magazine. I think these are the ones Joe maybe remembers. Um, in the next couple of photographs, had an interest in looking through family archives of photos and like recreating them. And I found this photo that my granda had took of the family with the rooster perched up there, and I was like, oh, maybe we should recreate this. And that seems like quite far away from the whole let's just take a photo off the cuff. But at the same time, I didn't pose them. I just said, look, bring the wrist around and let's take a photo. And they just stood there. And when I'm doing these type of photos, I don't usually say, oh, I'm going to take the photo now. I just wait until I feel like it's the right moment, and then I just take it. Obviously, with the analog camera, it's a lot like slower to get it set up, and it's a lot slower to take the photo and all of that there stuff. But that's kind of my approach with these photos. I don't tend to say do this or do that or stand a certain way. I just kind of wait for a minute and then take the photo. Um, so yeah, I find it interesting how these photos can go through generations, and it's like the same thing kind of happens over and over again. It's similar to that idea of like f- the familiar places, like taking photographs of familiar places, and that's like building up this like map of a place, like in your head, visual mapping, I suppose you could call it. And I suppose they create a picture of my home place. Um, and this is my final photo to show you all. Um, this again, I think was a recreation of a photo my granda took of. I think in the original photo it was my dad, but as a wee boy holding a rooster, and I took the photo, and now it's kind of like so many years later. So yeah, I think from looking at all of my work, there's something interesting about time passing and thresholds and familiarity, and how a place kind of like changes over time. And yeah, I forgot to say in this photo as well. I think maybe in the no, no, actually no. Um, yeah, so I think that kind of sums up my interest in these personal photographs that I've been building up, and hopefully over the next few years I can add to that a little bit more. And all these little traces of people, or all these little indexical moments, create a picture of my home place, of the landscape, of where I'm from, of rural outside Ballymena.